Okay, everybody, we're going to get started.
Hold on.
Oh. Armando, we're starting. Thank you.
We're talking about stocks.
I know, I'm just giving you a hard time. We're waiting for Jocelyn to run in. So, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, for being here this evening. Glad to be here with you. Wait, Maria's not on here. Well, we almost keep her here.
Because we knew she wasn't here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, Maria's not here. She has a family emergency that she's dealing with, and so she won't be here this evening. So you're stuck with me this evening. By the way, I'll make an announcement later. I'm going to use more humor today than I normally would. Simply because I'm going to own to where I am. Some of you know I had to put my horse down yesterday. So I'm still kind of in shock. My horse had Luna, some of you know her. She had a tragic accident yesterday at my ranch, and it was something she couldn't recover from. So we made the decision, me and the vet and ranch hand made a decision to put her down. Actually, euthanize probably sounds better. I'm not sure what sounds good. So welcome. And if you all want to come to the Irish Wake I'm having for on Saturday, you're more than welcome at the Capitol Grill. The drinks are not on me. But you're welcome to drop by.
It's not an Irish wake.
It's the Black Irish Wake.
And there is such thing as black.
There is a such thing as the Black Irish, and so it's like the, our version of it. It's like 40s instead of like Irish whiskey. But anyway, we're going to move on. We're going to have introductions. I'm Terrence Carroll, the facilitator. I'm also on the board of the Western Stock Show Association. Is that what we're calling ourselves now? Instead of just national? Yeah. I'm on the board of the Western Stock Show Association. We'll go starting...
Start with yourself.
Zach, introduce yourself. You're new.
Hello, my name is Zachary Sanfilippo. I'm with CRL Associates. Armando Payán, Global.
Jocelyn Hiddle, Colorado State University.
Nikolewski Global.
Tina Martinez, Denver Museum of Nature and Science.
Tim Stroh, History Colorado.
Larry Burgess, President of the Business Association.
John Sopien, Globeville.
Betty Graham, Swansea. Stephanie Reed with NUCO.
Brad Dodson with NUCO.
Liz Adams, CRL Associates.
Paul Andrews, National Western Stock Show.
AE Global.
Juan Veloz, de Liri, Swansea.
Vernon Hill, JJJ Properties, Globeville.
Hello, Tracy Weil, Reno Art District. I missed you guys.
We missed you too.
Liliana Flores Amaro from Swansea, as well as, along with John, our representatives on the authority board.
Drew Dutcher, Larry Swansea Neighborhood Association.
And we're going to the back. Well, behind us.
Brad Johnson, CPD Planning Services.
Ann Hayes with Westfield.
Eric Anderson with the Mayor's Office at the National Western Center.
Andrea Burns, National Western Center Authority, Marketing and Communications.
Brett Michelson, Corral Creek Consultants.
Barb Frommel, Mayor's Office of the National Western Center.
Matt Berry, National Western Center Authority.
Marcy Loughran with NUCO.
Jocelyn Robinson, Workforce Development with NUCO.
Hi there, Rusty Collins with Colorado State University and the 4-H Youth Development Program.
Mark Schaefer with Merrick Horizontal Infrastructure Designers.
Billy Gregg, Landscape Architect with Studio CPG, working with Merrick and the horizontal team. That's everyone.
Oh. Terrence is eating, so he's asked me to carry on his behalf. We'll now go to our partner updates. Why don't we start with Jocelyn, and I'll bring in the microphone, Jocelyn.
Thank you very much.
I have to make a quick apology. I traveled for the first 2 weeks of June, and I did not get the written updates from our partners, and I apologize for that. So they're going to give a little more details since you guys haven't had anything in writing, and it has been a couple of months since we gathered, so wanted to let you know that.
Hi, nice to see everybody. A couple things just to highlight. One is you guys heard Rusty Collins introduce himself. He's here answer any questions about the fact that we are exploring 4-H is part of CSU Extension, and so we are exploring a 4-H presence in global area Swansea. So in the fall, so 2 new folks have been hired as new 4-H officers here, and we'll be working to explore the creation of that with community members, and particularly with Garden Place and Swansea Elementary, with the leadership there. The Youth Action Coalition, yeah.
I want to give a big shout out to Rusty and Jocelyn. I mean, they've been phenomenal in this effort, and thanks to them, I believe we turned the page and making the world of the National Western Stock Show iconic. We've been working with the Urban Farm, which is out here off of Smith Road, to get some of the students from Garden Place Elementary acclimated to the livestock and agricultural arena, which in turn will be able to help us build on the 4-H club. And we're in the process of acquiring some miniature goats to get GES more acclimated to the National Western agricultural and livestock scene. So again, my hats off to Jonathan and Rusty for doing fantastic, and Brad. All of Brad's not here. I was hoping he'd be here so I could say thank you personally, but thank you.
He's on his way.
Thanks. So the 4-H club has not yet been stood up, but there's kind of a state process that you have to go through to get the 4-H club created. But we are looking forward to that hopefully happening in the fall with the partnership of the 2 schools. So along similar lines, the Youth Action Coalition that you've heard me mention before is an effort to really focus on engaging young people from Bruce Randolph in particular around the National Western Center. There are lots of folks who do youth engagement in the surrounding communities, but what we really wanted to focus on is National Western specific. So how can youth engage in creating ideas, having a voice, and so Tiana Nelson, whom many of you know, has stood this up with the help of all of the founding partners, both in the form of financial contribution to help fund the program, but then also there are champions from each of the founding partners who are part of that conversation and can provide connections to their respective organizations, and also sort of mentorship as appropriate. So all of those champions have also received some training from Project Voice around how to engage with youth. So really positive developments there. So I'll stop there. I have a lot more detail, but I can send it to Liz and she can send it out to you all, but come and talk to me or the rest of you if you have questions. Thanks. And thanks, Armando, for your comments.
So I just wanted to comment on the Youth Action Council and Project Voice. The training was led by young people for all of us, and I know Liliana was there, and it was amazing. These teens who really took us through the process of recognizing what voices are missing in a room, and in this case it was young people, and it's just a good reminder anytime you're in a room making decisions, thinking about who's missing and how we get those voices. So they were super impressive. I highly recommend them if you're looking to do any type of training. A few things at the museum. Next week we have a free night, which is a little bit different. We often do the SCFD free days, but we will be open until 10 o'clock on July 2nd. We'll have a DJ and a cash bar. Our census exhibit will be open, and if you haven't seen Leonardo da Vinci yet, it'll be a great night to come by and check that out. We, on Saturday, are hosting a nature play pop-up, which is an opportunity to hear from the community. We're working with Denver Parks and Rec on a nature play space and really gathering input on how people want to connect with nature at City Park. So if you're available, come out. That's at 9:30, and I'll send the flyer to Liz, and feel free to share that. And we'll be at the Denver County Fair in the near future, so look for us there.
I'll make this pretty quick. Right now in History Colorado and all of our community museums, we have free admission for kids 18 and under all throughout the summer. So that's not drop your kids off and we'll take care of them. Adults still cost money. Somebody already asked me that. So just want to let you know, and that's all over the state for our community museums, but here in Denver as well. So a pretty good opportunity for kids to come check out history.
We can just hand it around.
Okay, the National Western Stock Show staff is busy working on the Denver County Fair because it starts July 19th. So all the staff right now is in panic mode, and that's what happens 3 weeks out from a major event. So Tracy could probably tell you something about that since he started that big county fair. Anyway, we're also feverishly working on the National Western Stock Show. This is the time of year we renew all of our sponsorship agreements. We have about 70 of them to renew, and we are in that process. And then finally, we are working on the yards design, final yards design, and equestrian center design, probably 20 hours a week right now with that and our staff. So that is what we have going.
You got it? Okay. Okay. We're almost done with our dinner here. The next thing we have is the authority board member report. Liliana, Zach has the microphone for you, and we'll start with you and then go to John.
Thanks.
Okay.
I will let Brad do his update in just a little bit, but I did just want to share with you all, and I apologize that if we don't have copies or ready to be up on the screen today, but we'll get some time on the agenda for next month. So the authority board just approved the National Western Center Community Benefits guiding principles that will help guide our work as an authority. Really, before we have a fully developed community benefits agreement or program developed. So these are really designed to be our filters and our navigators in the decisions that we make to make sure that we're keeping community and the communities and the neighborhoods at the center of the decisions that we make, given that we're going to be talking about program implementation locally, nationally, globally, and so I'll ask for some more time at the next CAC meeting to go through that in more detail with you all. Liz or whoever can share this after the meeting so you all have some time to read it and look at it and come ready to talk. So that's my update right now. And then we're also, we're still waiting to hear from Councilwoman Ortega's office on sort of the debrief after those 3 initial meetings around the Community Investment Fund conversations and seeing how those conversations and process will continue. So, yeah.
Is there a timeline when Dave's going to be ready to get that out?
From Councilwoman Ortega's office? I can check, but I can check. It probably, I imagine we'll have something by the end of the summer, if not sooner, but I'll check. I'll check, yeah.
But Monique mentioned that she said she would have it by the end of this month.
Okay.
Monique had wanted to have it by this board meeting today.
Yeah.
Susan said, no, we said the end of the month. We said the end of the month, so it'll be June 30th or, so that should be the initial summary.
Yeah, the initial summary from those meetings, yeah.
The timeline for the delivery is several months down.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, are you, yeah, thank you for clarifying that. Of the initial summary or the whole process?
No.
Just the summary. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Brad will pull up your presentation, but Brad.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Just sort of quick highlights from the authority side of the table. We had, and we'll talk more about the sort of Cultivate campaign and the summit process and the focus areas that are going on in the presentation in just a few minutes. But just some highlights. We moved into our new offices, our new old offices,
that Drew actually helped with the design on. Thank you so much, Drew. And we did a small renovation to the north end of the 4th floor of the Livestock Exchange building. So come on up and see us from those windows. You can see out onto the whole campus. It's amazing views up there. And we moved in there just a few weeks ago. It's great to be sort of on the campus. It was the same week that NUCO moved their offices to their race court location. So we got the whole band back together again, all in one place geographically, and that's very helpful. And then also, since the last time we were here, some of you attended some of the summit events, so we didn't have a CAC meeting last month. But since then, we have filled the 4 positions that were funded for this year. Megan Sivikoff, who I don't think is here tonight, is our Director of Operations, handles internal organization operations as well as is our point person for campus operations. Steve Nally, who is not here tonight, is our Director of Real Estate. Some of you may know Steve. Steve worked for many years in the planning department, been very, very involved with neighborhood planning efforts and the National Western Center Master Plan. Grace Hanover was hired as our Special Projects Manager. She's helping with marketing communications and programming efforts under Matt Berry, who's here tonight, working on programming efforts and partnerships. And a new announcement to be made today for the first time in public is that we have hired a deputy position, and that person is not only other than our own Liz Adams has agreed to let us poach her from CRL, and she is coming to work at the authority, and I couldn't be happier about that.
So you're still stuck with me, just in a different capacity.
But as part of Liz leaving, we actually get a first-round draft pick to be named later.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a price that I will be paying. The Maria price. So Matt, I want to give you an update. This is not, I don't think.
Oh. Oops, that's the wrong one.
That's the Platte River from the Goldville side.
So we've been talking to you for a while about the cultivate process and what that is and sort of all the steps. And sort of now that we're about more than halfway through this process that started in February and will sort of culminate in September, I wanted to sort of take you through each of the pieces and parts so that hopefully the framework of this effort will become clearer. Vision and mission, this is where it all comes from, right? This is where we start. I can move. Maybe I can't. Can you bring it up on that screen? This is where we do. Yeah. Upper left view. Maybe that. Full screen mode. Down, down, down. Down. Some more down. Down. Stop. And click. So now we'll page down work. And so this is the big picture of where we've been. So the Cultivate campaign in March and April, this was the call for ideas. We got 270 some ideas, local to global. We had our summit last month on the day of the typical day of the CAC meeting, May 30th and 31st. That process uncovered and clarified the 5 focus areas that I'll go through in just a minute. Those focus areas are part of 5 tracks, each track having 1 meeting per month in June, July, and August. Those first 5 meetings for those 5 tracks for June have happened over the last 2 weeks. We had 3 of them this week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday nights. The meetings are held at the Livestock Exchange Building in the authority offices from 5 to 7. We'll have the dates for the rest of them here in just a minute. Those plans will then bring into more focus these 5 streams of project possibilities, experience possibilities, which will culminate in our strategic implementation plan in September. And what that is sort of these areas of work that we're going to focus on for the next year and years to come. Not specific projects, we'll work with you on the specific projects, but getting very close to talking about the exact types of projects we want to do together. It will also inform our work plan. So this will start to describe for the authority and for the authority team what it is we're doing in the realm of not just programming, but campus-wide services, our role around sort of acting as Paul and I do every day, act as client to neutral and user of these buildings, and all the other things that we'll do. So, cultivate plan. 267 ideas came in from all sorts of locations.
Excuse me, Brad?
Yes.
Could you go back, please, to that slide? I just want to point out, boy, I like this. Turn it on, man. I'm really pissed.
Those are not energy efficient light bulbs.
Wow.
This is a next project.
These need to be LED bulbs.
Wow.
That was awesome.
The 2-day summit, day 1, big vision, sort of learning, talking about exploring what's at stake if we don't really take advantage of this incredible opportunity. Day 2 that we had in Rhino, where I know a lot of you were there on that day.
Which neighborhood in Rhino?
Which neighborhood in Rhino?
Do you endorse that statement, Tracy?
I would.
Okay. We can move on, but we'll discuss this further. River North Art District is an intersection point for historic neighborhoods, all of which have historic boundaries. So we're trying to raise that to the surface. It's okay, let's go on, it's a short meeting. We'll continue to help one another with that.
It's not between Curtis Park and Ballpark, but I'm not sure which.
Okay, well that's close, at least the name's not here now. So anyway, a point made, and it's all in good humor.
Thank you, Eddie. Go ahead. And we uncovered and talked about these operating principles, and I want to spend a few minutes on these so that they get clear. You know, we talk a lot about sort of all the things that are important to us, and some of these things are just across everything that we're doing. Regardless of what the program area is, they're true about everything we do. And you know, when we started thinking about history and heritage of these neighborhoods, of these communities, of these cultures, of these organizations, these institutions, of these places, of the stockyards here and the river. There's all this history and heritage, but there's also this conversation about cutting-edge innovation, and that we're going to push the envelope at every step of the way. And one might think that those two things are in opposition to each other, when in fact they are inextricably linked to each other. They rely on each other. Yesterday's history, you know, today's history is yesterday's innovation. I always start that one wrong. It'd be so much more powerful if I got that right. Today's history is yesterday's innovation. And so in our innovation today, we're going to be making tomorrow's history. And so they're tied together. Everything we do is on the shoulders of the past. And so I love this concept of tying these two things together. They're not actually pulling together. They rely on each other. So that everything we do is connected, past, present, and future. Same thing about the scale, right? I mean, folks might think, oh, it's all about the neighborhoods, or folks might think it's all about, you know, this global vision, when in fact it's both and everything in between. So these conversations happen right here on the ground in these communities and in these neighborhoods. They happen statewide, and you know, the urban and rural conversation we have nationally and internationally. So we always are thinking about this continuum of scale and impact as well. We hold sustainability and regeneration as just the water we swim in. I mean, it's who we are. It's about everything that we do, and not just in terms of the environment, but also financially. These things need to be regenerative and sustainable financially, so that they last. They last for generations, just like this place has lasted for generations so far. Again, something it's the water we swim in. The connections. Everything we're doing is about connections. It's about building these relationships within these communities and these neighborhoods and communities outside of Denver as well, and all around the planet. It's all about connections. It's about sharing each other's experience, connecting through our history, connecting through our shared experiences, connecting through and learning, you know, new things, new innovations that we've never thought of before. It's all about connections and relationships. These 4 principles, when you overlay them, create a bit of a gridwork or a beginning of a framework for how to think about the many different kinds of things we should be thinking about taking on in this project. And this is really helpful to us because it's so big. There's so many possibilities and so many opportunities. How do you sort of organize our thinking? And what we found was that this framework actually gave us a good sort of map, a matrix, to start to look at where things happen. So there might be something that's very locally scaled, that's really focused on history and heritage, or it could be very locally scaled and focused more towards the innovation end of the continuum. Or it could be international about history and international about innovation. It starts to place these things on a spectrum. And we think it's going to be an important thing to make sure we're doing everything. We don't want to miss something, right? We want to make sure that the things we're doing aren't too clustered in just one area, and we're only focusing on one area and not paying attention to another. So those are our operating principles that we sort of have been talking about. So we went from ideas, we went from the Cultivate campaign to the focus areas, which is an organizing structure just to put things into some buckets so that we can start to talk about it. We went from focus areas to the framing questions, and to those of you who have been to any of the 5 focus area meetings so far, you'll know that we framed the conversation around questions that we all start with, how might we? And this is our next generation focus area. How might we inspire school-age children pre-K to 12 to become environmental stewards? And then we present the ideas that were submitted through the Cultivate campaign and still continue to come in from all of you and all over the country that address that topic. And we have people sort of say, I like that idea, I don't like that idea, I can do that idea, or I know someone that can do that idea. Or we can partner with CSU because CSU's already doing that idea. And so in each of the 5 focus areas, we're doing that. So from focus areas to framing questions. And then from framing questions to the concepts. And this is where then our work plan will come out of this. So this process that we've been going through since the first of the year has an order to it and has a methodology to it and will lead up to the answers that we've all been wanting to get to for a lot of years. And now Matt will talk about the focus area process and what we've learned about that process, what's working, what's not working so far.
Hey everyone, good evening, and thanks for those that have already come to some of the focus area meetings. I think it's critical to have your voice in that room, and I'll talk a little bit about what we've been doing in the first meeting, but then share also what we're doing in the subsequent 2 and invite you to all participate. So 3 meetings, 3 months. The first meetings, as Brad said, just wrapped up in yesterday. The goal of the first meeting was to socialize the process that we're trying to run, the concepts that we presented. It was really an orientation meeting. The focus was to gather feedback at a pretty high level. So these were the sample framing questions that Brad had on the previous slide. This is within the next generation frame. So we had 4, I'm going to stand on this side. We had 4 framing questions, and then within each of those, these are representative. We had several concepts related to those. And these are essentially taking those 267 ideas and rolling them up into some higher concepts just so we could have the ability for a group to review everything in a 2-hour meeting. Next slide. The next meeting is where we introduce the operating principles that Brad just shared. And so this is taking all of those concepts, taking the feedback we got from the first meeting, and starting to refine those and sort those in terms of how they fit related to the operating principles, how they're going to fit related to the real estate and the development itself, how they fit related to space and time. So knowing that a lot of these projects and programs may be great ideas that actually can't take place on a campus that doesn't yet exist. There's other projects that we could be doing in 2020, whether it's in the community or virtual strategies. So we're going to start to put the layer of the constraints and the operating principles on top of that. Next slide. And the third meeting will actually move toward recommending strategies to us and the board. This is where we're going to talk a little bit about where we can act now, where we can plan for the future, the role that the National Western Center team might play in terms of trying to lead an initiative or bring folks together, or where we would play a monitoring role tracking the work. There's so much, as Brad was saying, connected to the mission and vision that we're trying to accomplish. It's a question of how do we put the right order and sequence of events so moving forward into our work plan into 2020 and through 2022, how do we start kind of putting those pieces together to build out our programming and partnership strategy? So in terms of the first meetings, and I'd love feedback from folks in the room. I know we've had a handful and would love to have more presence from this group in the room. We've had good turnout. We've had about 50 people, unique folks across all the rooms. The Strengthening the Food and Ag Economy was by far the largest. I think there's generally good energy in the room. We received good information around the concepts. We tried to make it accessible to everyone who was there, so we had sticky notes, you could write on it, you could dot vote, you could have conversations, and then we did some share out at the end. Lots of opportunities also for improvement, and one is this challenge that we've had in terms of creating this inclusive participatory process that includes folks who are brand new to the project, folks who have been part of this project since inception. Lots of questions about how we apply a diversity, equity, and inclusivity lens to the work. As we refine our strategy, I think we recognize we need to do a lot of homework around these concepts. The concepts were on the earlier slides, to understand what really is going to create the highest impact programming and opportunities. A lot of questions around how we continue to engage participants beyond the SIP. So knowing that these are 3 meetings, this isn't the end of the engagement around our programming and partnerships. It's really the beginning or another launch point in terms of how we move forward on the next chapter. And then finally, I think a strong recognition that our other partners like CSU and the Stock Show are already doing a lot of these projects, and we need to make sure that this is all coordinated and complementary versus on what's happening versus competitive. So the last thing I'll say is I would just love to have folks in this room attend. I think it's really important that this group represents a lot of historical and institutional knowledge about the National Western Center, the communities, that without that voice in the room, I think we're missing a big piece. And I know we've had some folks attend, but anyone who's in this room, we'd love to have you attend and lend your voice and lend your ideas to the process. Thanks.
Can we get those dates somehow published or emailed or something?
Yeah.
It's on the list.
They're on our website. We'll make sure we get it out to you.
But we'll email it to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any questions right now?
I just wanted to I want to put an exclamation point on what Matt said. I have attended all of these meetings, and I'm very uncomfortable at being essentially the only person from the CAC, the National Western, the NWC-CAC, that is there, because for many people in that room, it's their first exposure to this project. Now, there's been people from the partners there, so I'm, talking, and to me, there's a danger of us losing the historical weight of the fact that there has been an engaged process. And a lot of the ideas and concepts that are being discussed have been on this table in conversation for years. And I would be brokenhearted if what was generated from this was a report that a vendor that came in to help facilitate a program was credited with initiating the strategic, innovative substance that is there to work with, because this group, even as we go into discussing what is next for us, has really been a key factor in helping focus a lot of what is already there for people to work with. And it's okay with me that part of what's happening is new people are getting oriented. It is a very limited population. To me, the methodology that's being used, I've been honest, I'm not completely comfortable with. There are other ways to do this, but again, this is a step. So I would really especially encourage members from within the neighborhoods to come and lend a voice and bear witness to what work has been done. And the folks that have come from the partnerships, from CSU, etc., really have helped people in that room understand the magnitude of what this partnership really is and the greatest vision.
And I would also just add that the way it's set up, we're having 3, but if you missed the one this last couple of weeks, you have, when you come to the second one, they're distinct. So if you could only make one this summer, don't feel like since you weren't at the first one, you wouldn't be caught up. Each one is distinct, and you can show up at one, the second one, or the third one, and you're not lost, you're not behind. Particularly all of you, particularly. So yeah, I would echo A's comments. Yep.
Is there anything online that talks about, like, that will tell you what was spoken of in the previous meeting?
We're working, so we're sending feedback to the folks that were on the list. So any of these folks, this is for anyone who's interested in the content from the focus areas, just let me know. We'll make sure you're on the distribution list. Or we can send it to everyone. I think we're working to set up an online folder structure so anyone can go in and see those. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
I just want to let people know that part of what I've been doing is taking pictures of everything that's posted and written up there. And part of the reason I'm doing that is because then conversations can have with people. We can have conversations with each other about, expansion and contraction. I'm one of these people that doesn't like the contracting down without real documentation of the expansion, because you may have an outlier that you missed that could transform the whole thing. And one content comment I wanted to make that has to do with the operating principles. I was uncomfortable at the summit when I asked one of the facilitators if the operating principles were going to be discussed, and the term she used is, no, they're pretty baked in. Okay, now I like baking and everything, but an example of where I think we still need to think about them is the one that talks about scale. And we did talk about this, and I brought it up, and I'm going to stand by us continuing to think about it. Replication is different from scale. Scaling, it can be seen as strictly volumetric size or reach or terrain. Replication can be an innovative solution that can be replicated with a tailored application in neighborhoods all over the world without scaling up into large industrial agriculture or whatever. Just the concept. I'm not comfortable with that operating principle being worded as that. So I'm just saying that because I want everybody to think about every step, and I want the conversation to remain open even as decisions have to be made step by step to build on things. And that's part of what can happen in this series of meetings.
I just had a quick question, because I had July 15th for Next Generation, and this is July 16th. Do we know what these are?
I think it was moved a day later for city council. No one focus area meeting had 2 city council meetings over the 3.
Yeah, we did originally have it the 15th. Yeah, a few weeks ago it changed. Good catch.
So I'm sorry, it was on the 16th. It is on the 16th. It should be a Tuesday.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, I'm just going to ask if there's any other business or...
Let me introduce Jeff
Oh,
first.
yeah,
We have a special guest at this that just showed up somewhere. Oh, Jeff Shoemaker from the Greenway Foundation, sitting over there. Jeff's a good friend. I've known him for a long time. We served on the board of MSU Denver together until I was voted off the island. Actually, my 8-year term was up. I didn't get voted off the island. So is there any other CAC business or announcements?
He needs a better introduction than that.
Oh, we're going to give him an introduction. We're going to give him an introduction.
Okay, I can give him the big introduction.
He's going to participate in a little bit.
Okay, he's going to participate, but if you like what's going on with the Platte River, Jeff Shoemaker's the guy. If you like what's going on with the bike paths, the river paths, how clean the river has become, Jeff, his father before him, and his family have been crucial in making sure that happens. How do you like that one?
Where'd he go?
He's right behind me. We should do a podcast together, John.
That's one of the learning things.
So he's going to have a chance to speak in a little bit, I think, though.
Yeah.
He's actually going to speak in a little
So here's, thanks to John, here's your biggest problem is you're going to have to listen to me twice tonight. So I'll apologize to all of you for that. But here's who I want to acknowledge. For those of you that don't know, my father, Joe Shoemaker, in 1974 created the Greenway Foundation to take back a river, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But he appointed, along with Mayor Bill McNichols, 8 other committee and then foundation board members, and you are looking at one of the original, I'm putting my arms around one of the 8 original board members of the Greenway Foundation, John Zapian, who I call the godfather of Globeville, to come to me on the day of my daughter's wedding. And John has been a friend and a mentor since I took on this crazy job in 1982. So thank you, John. And you'll deal with me later. So thank you, brother.
Thank you. I want to say something about the presentation. First of all, I'm very happy that we've come this far in this effort. I would like to see and encourage people to from this group to participate more. And I want to say this kind of tongue-in-cheek. You know, if we leave a void in some of these areas, it'll be filled. And sometimes it's not to our liking. So we have an opportunity here to participate and guide and come out with a very good end result. And I know everyone's busy, and it's a busy time of the year, but these things need to be done. So I encourage you to participate when and if you can. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other business for this portion, for CAC business announcements, et cetera, et cetera?
Do I have a microphone?
Yeah, you have the mic, so you think you want to say something, and I don't have the off button right here, so it's okay.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Terrence. Good evening, Brad Dodson.
Oh, I didn't know you were next.
I am next.
I thought you were in the doing something.
No, you closed that part of the agenda, and we're moving on to the next.
No, I was doing a dramatic pause to make sure no one had anything to say. Okay, dramatic pause is over. Now, the wonderful interim director of NWC-CAC, a man who we all know and love and adore, who's been with us, who we've grown to respect. He's there on the ground fighting for us every day. Brad.
Thank you, Terrence.
How'd you like that
one? Good evening, Brad Dodson, Interim Executive Director of the Mayor's Office of the National Western Center. You all should have received an email about 3 weeks ago from Gretchen Hallra on her last days. And I will tell you, before she left our office on June 7th, she shared with me that the one meeting that she will miss the most was the monthly CAC meeting. It was always the highlight of her month, and I'm being completely serious. That she shared with me, like, I love that meeting. So I think we'll see her coming back, and I'd love to invite her back sometime.
But we continue to make just a ton of progress, and we have a few updates for you here this evening. This is our site plan. We haven't changed it. It is the same site plan, but we put it up here every month in case we need to reference it. And Marcy, if we'll go on to the next slide. As you'll see, for all of our contracts, we've been slowly moving these from green to orange. And orange means that we're done. And so we are quickly moving through contracts. We've been doing that over the last couple years. So out on the street today is the design for the livestock center. So that is in active procurement. You'll see that in green there now. And after that, we have one procurement left in phases 1 and 2. So we are almost done with procurement. The CMGC for the livestock center comes out later this year. I want to introduce Stephanie Reed, who is our program director. Stephanie oversees all of the construction for phase 1 and 2 of the campus, and she is going to do a construction update.
Hi, thanks for having me tonight. If you're looking up on your screen, you'll see that we are finishing phase 1 of the extension of the Montclair outfall towards the river. And right there on the right-hand side, if you squint, you can kind of see where we signed the pipes. So they are there right next to a manhole. And those of you that signed inside of the pipes, if you climb down the manhole, you'll be able to see your signature from now on. So it's pretty cool. Hopefully that you guys made it to that event and were able to sign those before we put them in the ground. So moving forward on the horizontal update, I think you guys have seen our large concrete piles out there. We are crushing the concrete that's coming out of the yard so we can use it on the site. The water tower will be starting to be deconstructed at the end of August on our site. We will be storing that until it finds its new home in the stockyards. As far as our vertical construction goes, the maintenance and operations building, GH Phipps right now is advertising for the GMP on that building. We will negotiate that, and construction should start in that building in October. The Stockyard Event Center and Stockyard design is ongoing, as you heard Paul reference that earlier in the evening. And the 60% design is done. It's currently going through review and cost estimating. The Equestrian Center, we're doing program verification with NUCO and all of the stakeholders with our selected designer, Populous. We currently are negotiating the contract for the CMGC, our constructor, Whiting Turner, to go through council here pretty soon. The Livestock Center, as Brad said, we have the RFQ on the street for the design, and our team is currently packaging up that CMGC procurement to be let later in July. And then on the demolition front, we are currently anticipating you actually seeing some physical demolition of the Les Moutons Noir building at the end of July, beginning of August. That will also include the Crystal Packaging building and the Double Barrel building right next to Les Moutons. So I'm going to turn it over to Marcy to kind of give you an update on logistics.
Okay, so we have some construction going on out there. You guys may have seen it. Now it's starting to get a little bit real. If anybody been driving on Brighton lately, you can see that you've probably driven on the new piece of the northbound Brighton segment. That is now open. Southbound Brighton, we are still tracking to open that piece on July 10th, but things are looking pretty good with the paving this week. Last week was pretty rainy, so this week it's looking pretty good, and we're hoping, not hopeful, that it'll be open by July 10th, and maybe they can improve on that just a little bit. We have an upcoming closure on Race Court on July 15th. That'll be a full closure of that street. There'll be local businesses only. We'll be sending out some information on that. That is to do some boring and some other underground work. So let's see, we recently, I think Stephanie talked about, we recently completed a storm pipe, the Montclair outfall, that 46-inch wastewater pipe going across National Western Drive. We did a small closure on National Western Drive as we put that across, so that is complete. CenturyLink is going to be doing a relocation on National Western Drive on July 1st. I'm not exactly sure what that looks like. They don't totally share their plans with us on that, but it shouldn't be much of an impact. And again, Brighton is almost complete. There's also been some work in the stockyards just behind the livestock exchange building, as Excel's been putting in their new transformer. and running some lines. So they're finishing up running the cable the next 2 days, and they're looking like they're going to transfer power over to that new transformer on Saturday. It should not have any impact to that building. The Livestock Exchange building, they're going to be able to turn over that power without any damage there. We're really starting to push out a lot of our updates for construction through the text platform. That's what it's built for. So if you guys have not signed up for the text updates, and I'm pretty sure everybody in this room has, right? We all did it together 6 months, a year ago. Please make sure to sign up again. Text the word updates to 64600 or noticias to 64600, and we are, as soon as we get that information, we are pushing things out, trying to get as much advance notice as we can on things. This is really, as things are starting to get going, we're coordinating a lot with Central 70 and really understanding those impacts and trying to be mindful of everything else that is going on along with what's going on with our program. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, yes. Our program team, I think it was just a few weeks ago, we did reach out to Jalisco, who's doing the 47th, or the Pet Bridge, and we arranged to have some parking for them over at 48th and Brighton. There's a little lot that the stock show has graciously allowed us to share with them, so it looks like a lot of that worker parking is being rerouted and parking in that area and not in any of the neighborhoods. So thank you to our program team for being really proactive and reaching out to them and offering a parking solution. So. Oh, good. Yep. So, yep. I think there was definitely some parking challenges, and I think we were able to solve that and move it forward.
Marcy, do you have any idea when RTD's North Metro line will open?
The latest that I heard, and Steph, you might know more about this, they are testing that line right now. They started testing, I think it was in April. And so the testing for RTD is typically about a year process. And so I think they're still tracking to open that line, that station of April of next year, April 2020. And if you've been over there recently, you've seen they've got some of the, where you pick up the tickets and you get on, what is that called? Station? The station. The platform. Platform is the word I was looking for. So the platform stuff is coming up. I had Transformers down. Any other questions? Yes.
I just have a question. It may be a little premature right now, but what's the disposition of that stock bridge that terminates from one side of the river to the other?
The sheep bridge?
Yes.
That is, we are saving that sheep bridge, and it actually is going to stay in place, and it's reflected in that fly through and some of the other plants that we have on site. So it'll become a permanent fixture of the campus.
Okay, so you're going to utilize that to access one side of the river or another?
It will not be a usable bridge, no. It'll be more of an art. Where's the
historic artifact.
Historic artifact, yes.
Well, I guess I got kind of some issues with the bridge, which I'm going to bring up again, which I talked about earlier. We having property right next to the river there, okay, that bridge creates a lot of backup, specifically to the outfalls on the west side of the river. And we spoke to this once before. I spoke to John about it, and there was supposed to be some design work done to assist in dealing with these issues if that bridge was going to remain. And to date, there's been nothing done about it. And there's a big concern in reference to the outfalls, which are in the area of the bridge where we have a lot of debris building up. And at this point, no one has really kind of addressed any of this.
I will definitely have to follow up on that with you and get myself up to speed. Do you know any more about that, Eric?
Yeah, it would be, so we'll have to work with the Urban Waterways and Dave Jula from Denver Public Works to be able to figure out what they're doing on the west side. We don't have any control of that, but we can talk with those guys.
Okay, well, I guess, is this a commitment that there will be something addressed in reference?
That I couldn't tell you. It wouldn't be up to us to do that. It would be up to the city or the Army Corps to work on that.
So does the Stock Bridge that's there, that belongs to the National Western?
That is correct.
Okay.
Actually, it's owned by the city.
Not National Western Stock.
No, I understand.
It's part of the National Western Center, that's correct.
All right, well, I would hope that, you know, we could hear something about what's going to take place with this, because right now the river's up. It's not really bad yet, but having been down at the river here recently, we're already starting to accumulate debris in this area. And I've talked about this with you guys probably about 4 years ago, and still no one's really addressing the issue.
Vernon, we're happy to take that back to the city's Department of Public Works and that team, and we will get you an answer. I commit that to you. We'll bring that back next month.
I can add one thing. So one thing we are doing, the pier that is in the river, we have to do some repairs to that. Now, one of the things we may look at is diversion of debris and some kind of blockage on the front of that to keep debris from gathering on that. So that may be part of our design work. So we are looking at that piece, but the outfalls on the west side we're not addressing. So.
I'd also say one last thing about it, and I won't take too much of your time. There is work being done with the levee system in the river area. Okay, and what I'm hearing right now, I don't think everybody's working together on this. And I think that all the different divisions of people that are going to be working with the levee as well as you guys with your stuff need to really be talking together in reference to what's going on here, because I'm getting an uncomfortable feeling that nobody's talking to each other, everybody's doing their own project.
We'll look at that.
Tim.
Yeah, Vern, I think you're right. We actually have been working on that. Council heard a contract for a $750,000 study that includes that area. It was held up by Councilwoman Ortega with some questions about what the total scope is. NDCC has paid $750,000 for the study to look at exactly that area tied into Washington, but then how it connects to all the other pieces. And so we've already got a study moving on that right now that should go through council the 8th of this month, July, sorry.
We've been working on the drainage in the neighborhood and also the levee that's going to go in. And I'm sure, I have confidence in what we've done so far and what the city's proposing will alleviate most of your concerns, Vern. I think the pier that's in the middle of what, it's an old, I don't know how old that thing is, but it does collect debris. So the construction of a wedge to divert the debris as it comes down, I think might, give you a little more reassurance that can be taken care of. But I have every confidence in everything that you and I work with in the drainage effort and in ongoings with the levee project will alleviate all of your concerns. It's a floodplain, and that's not going to change, at least in the foreseeable future. And I share some of your concerns about that. So all I can say is that, we'll deal with it as we get to it. And with the help of everyone that's been involved in it, I'm sure it will be done to everyone's satisfaction.
You and I get together with Chris and we can show you what we're looking at and design the plan. I think that'll
Any other comments on levees, floodplains? Okay, I think you're still up. Are you done, Marcia? Or are you still up?
Back to me.
Back to Brad.
So our team and Barb Cromwell is leading this work. We continue our work on campus-wide services. A couple updates for you. First of all, on campus energy, continue to do work with the authority, moving forward within that pre-development phase. And so we'll have an update for you in the coming months. But we're excited that just continues to move forward, exploring a low-carbon, resilient campus. Part of the work. Go back to that, Marsh. Part of that work includes work with Denver Water to bring recycled water infrastructure to the campus. We have finalized an IGA, an intergovernmental agreement with Denver Water that will be going to the Denver Water Board next month to City Council right after that. Again, that funds recycled water, purple pipe infrastructure for the campus. And then we continue the work on concessions and IT security, outdoor media, and waste. And of course, we continue our work, if you want to click to the next slide, on future phases. As you all know, we received responses to the RFQ that went out earlier this year. The city has been in the process of evaluating those responses. We anticipate a short list, an announcement of short list proposers next month, right after the 4th of July. And then we continue to be on track to a draft RFP later this year in the fall. We have a couple updates, actually 3 updates this evening, one on rezoning, one on public art, and then on the river. And for rezoning, I want to invite Brad Johnson to come up. We figured this agenda needed another Brad on it. So Brad Johnson is with the city's Department of Community Planning and Development, and we'll be talking about a rezoning effort that will be going to planning board next month. The rezoning for phases 1 and 2 is consistent with the master plan, and it provides a zoning framework to enable the work that the Capitol Build is doing on phases 1 and 2. And so Brad Johnson will walk you through that.
Hello. Right. Thanks, Brad. Yeah, so that was a good introduction. I think this is the 4th or 5th time we've been here as CPD to talk about the rezoning effort. So you guys have seen a lot of the stuff that I'm going to have in this presentation, and this was always sort of the first group that we came to as we were noodling around with the zoning and try to come up with a strategy. This was sort of our first public stop to share what we had been working on. And so since that time, since I think the last time we were here was at your late January meeting, and since that time we have been working on refining the zoning, but we've also been going out and sharing that work with other people beyond this group. So we've been talking with the city council members, we've been talking with the planning board, we went to INC-ZAP and all these other groups, and worked diligently with a lot of the stakeholders as well to refine the zoning. So this is not what's on the computer.
Oh, Zach, sorry.
So I'm going to keep talking. My main goal here is to really give you an update on the process for the zoning. All these guys worked that out, but I thought what I could do is sort of share with you in a really quick way, since a lot of this material is old hat for you, what I've been sharing with city council members and these other groups and planning board members and so on. Brad mentioned we have a planning board hearing scheduled for July 10th to hopefully get a recommendation on the rezoning for the campus. And you guys might have seen, if you've been driving around out here, there's zoning, rezoning signs out there. So we're really in the official adoption process at this point. And we're excited about that because it's a pretty big milestone to have got to this point. Okay. Getting close here.
Understood. Probably just your backyard.
Right there, you got it.
Okay. Okay, next slide. So I first orient them to this campus, right? That's just nested within these neighborhoods, Loveville and Elyria, Swansea.
Thank you, Steve.
Remind them of who the partners are. Share Gretchen's favorite old slide and Nuko's favorite slide about who's going to build it, who fills it, who shows it, and who's going to note it, right? So kind of some of the key responsibilities of key partners. Remind them of the schedule and where we came from. So that includes the National Western Center Master Plan, as well as the framework agreement along the way, and then how the regulatory package work fits in there. Zoom in on that regulatory work. We started back in summer 2018, and here we are well, I guess we're now in summer 2019. Remind them of the master plan, as well as its guiding principles, as well as the Gloveville and Elyria and Swansea neighborhood plans and their importance to providing a guiding vision for the campus. Remind them of sort of the big moves that were envisioned in the master plan and how they're starting to manifest themselves in NUCO's illustrative plan there. So showing an old aerial and the vision for the campus side by side, so you can see some of the big moves contemplated. Then I walked them through the vision, because before I want to get into the proposal for the zoning, I want to make sure they're understanding what the vision is for the campus that was worked hard on back in the master plan days and that you guys have continued to craft here and with others. So I walked them through the campus, starting around the Betty Cram corridor there, some of the buildings that are expected to be developed there. Move into the sort of central portion of the main campus and the large facilities, as well as the Link Plaza. Remind them about the opportunities that are being seen here for historic preservation and keeping those elements that are historic mixing with the new buildings. I move into the sort of northern and southern extents of the Phase 1-2 campus and the character that's envisioned for those areas with the stockyards and more outdoor and support facilities like the maintenance facility. Share some of the renderings that you guys have seen so many times. Talk about some of the properties that are going to remain the same for a little bit longer. So we have Blue Silos, of course. It's going to continue to operate there, as well as part of McDonald Farms. And then the bridge-to-bridge riverfront open space amenity and its role within the campus, both as an amenity for the campus and the neighborhood, as well as its role in stormwater management. And then I get into the zoning. So I shared this material with you guys, but I just want to do a quick refresher. So how do we achieve that vision through the zoning that we're working on? So just a little bit of housekeeping first, just to remind you guys, at this stage, we're just rezoning the portion of the campus west of the tracks. So what's shown in orange, there are a couple of exceptions to that. One is the DRIR property, the other is McDonald Farms. The city hasn't taken ownership of those properties yet, so for now, we're not going to rezone them. Some of the framework ideas behind the zoning, so public streets out here are critical, they're important, and the streets that connect to Gloveville through the campus to Elyria, Swansea are even a higher priority. So the zoning needs to reflect that in terms of how buildings interface with the streets and what uses are allowed there. Respect for the river, and that means being careful about what uses are allowed close to the river, making sure that new buildings are set back adequately to provide the potential for pathways along the river. And when a building is built next to the river, making sure that it's engaging the river, so we're not getting blank walls along the river. We're having real windows and real architecture that enlivens that space. And I'd like to also remind them that this is not a typical urban environment, right? There are a lot of uses that we've got to accommodate out here that some urban zoning districts don't work that well for. And so that means everything from a maintenance and operations facility to state-of-the-art research facilities that CSU is going to run and everything else in between. So to get there, what we're looking at is setting up 4 new campus National Western Center zone districts, and those are mapped here. And I'll walk through quickly each one of those, but tailored regulations would be applied to each of those districts to achieve different objectives. So it starts with what we're calling the Campus National Western Center Core District, and so that's really the downtown of the main campus, with Betty Cram sort of as that Main Street east-west corridor. So development that happens around the core district is treated in zoning very similar to some of our Main Street districts around town. So that means making sure that buildings have windows, that there's a relationship established between the public realm or the street and the buildings and the activities that are within those buildings. Next district is Campus National Western Center General. And that sort of coincides with those large facilities, so the equestrian center and the livestock center and the Link Plaza in between. And so that's a little bit more flexible than the core district in terms of what uses would be allowed, and there's still some importance with street edge character, or the way that development relates to the street, as there is frontage on National Western Center Drive North there. Fourth district is what we're calling Campus National Western Center Flex. So that's the most flexible of all the zone districts that we're proposing here, and it coincides with the operations and maintenance facilities, the stockyards, the storage areas to the southern part of the campus, and it allows the most variety, the highest variety of uses, and it has the most flexibility in terms of what development needs to do, or how development establishes a pedestrian-friendly street edge. So it may not be buildings built right up along the street in this zone district, it may be a landscape edge or something like that to provide that buffer. And finally, the riverfront district. So again, that coincides with the sort of bridge-to-bridge open space amenity, and that one's really focused on preserving that space and making sure that space develops as an open space amenity. It does allow development, it does allow buildings, but the idea is that those buildings and any other land uses that are non-open space would be subordinate to the open space amenity itself. And the way that buildings are built there need to respond and reflect and engage the river and National Western Drive. Yes, ma'am.
So, quick question on that. We talked.
Quick question on that. You seem to be excluding area adjacent to the river to the south of that as open space?
Down through here?
Correct. And so I think there was always a hope that even if it was minimal, that there would be some band of open space that continues along the river, that you could connect that area down to promenade and all the other activities that are along the river. So you seem to not be doing that in this zoning.
So there's a few things that we do. It is treated differently than this open space that we know is planned and going to be an open space into the future, and there's clarity about what development or what non-developed areas are going to occur there. The certainty about what's going to happen south of the river is a little bit less clear in certain areas, right? There are some properties owned by other landowners that aren't the city, like I mentioned, McDonald Farms. But we are doing some things to preserve the opportunity for that open space link. We talked about that when I was here last time, I remember. So that's setting back buildings. That's making sure buildings engage the river when they are constructed, and making sure that uses that are going to preclude the type of open space connectivity environment that you're talking about are not located there. And then I would say one other thing on that is that we remember, I'm focused on the zoning right now, but we do have the design standards and guidelines that are very clear about development, creating that riverfront open space amenity, and so including all the way down. So there's a character area in the I'm going to skip to it real quick. So here's our character area in the DSG, so the design standards and guidelines, and you see that riverfront character area and the design standards and guidelines that come along with that, spanning that whole section. Yes, it's not as strong as zoning it as the riverfront open space, I agree.
Who made that decision? Can you change it? Can you show it?
So you can change anything.
I would suggest that you carry it through so that it's embedded in the zoning. Even if it's minimal, even if it's enough for just a bike path, and just do it. I mean, otherwise it'll disappear over time, and I think that connectivity is really, really important.
Isn't that where the retention?
Okay. We'll consider that.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so quickly on signs. So nothing's changed about this slide, but the idea is that there's a baseline set of sign regulations that are very similar to other campus districts, and they allow a certain type of signs by right. We are looking at adding a mechanism into the zoning code that would allow additional types of signage not allowed under that base zone regulations that could allow for innovative signage that we might not even be thinking about right now. Coordinated, high-quality design signage. That mechanism in the zoning is mainly just sets up the ability for that signage to be created, provided that a district sign plan is prepared and approved by planning board through a public process. So it provides an opportunity for it, but it doesn't just give it away. Right now, the key part of the zoning language that we've crafted relative to this, beyond the legalese and mechanisms language to set up the option, is the criteria that's in that section. So that talks about making sure that any signage allowed, even under a district sign plan, would be sensitive to the neighborhood, would be of a high quality design, would be coordinated around throughout the campus, and so on.
So, Brad?
I just want to put a little bit more emphasis on what you just, the reassurance that you just gave around the signage, being sensitive, to the neighborhoods, et cetera. And this is something, and I talked to Liz about this a little earlier too, and got some reassurance that the signage process is in and of itself set constraints, et cetera, because there have been, just for us to refresh our institutional memory as a CAC, we did have some conversations about very important things having to do with light pollution, with the considerations about signs and how they broadcast over the neighborhoods and that kind of a thing. And another thing, and this might be a reassurance I could get from you, Paul, from your experience, I think signage is a possible money raiser, and I wondered can we be reassured, is there a way we can be reassured that the way that we possibly benefit from that can be done with no exceptions will be made, that make it brighter than, you know what I'm saying, that keep it within the constraints of wanting to have minimal light impact. I mean, can that be part of the awareness, or is it already? I'm always a little bit nervous about variances being made in exceptions that can, in things that can then generally affect things. But I support signage being a possible revenue for the project. So do you approach that in the conversations as you're raising money?
So that is an interesting question. Signage today on this site is not a money raiser, because I got 2 digital signs. They're both on I-70. They both can turn once an hour, and neither one of them can promote a product. So all they can do is promote what's happening at the campus. So right now you see it probably says National Cutting Horse Association Western Regionals are here, right? So if I could have sold that sign in a sponsorship deal to Pepsi, for instance, then yes, would have been a big money raiser, but no. There are other signage opportunities, though, across the National Western Center campus, and I know Brad is focused on them. Signage potentially like you see on the 16th Street Mall, where kiosks are being used, and they're on a site plan that you can walk through, and they're directional signage, and at the same time they have some sort of advertising message on them. Those are money raising. But that's really something I'm sure Brad can address as he gets down the road there thinking through that.
Brad is that?
Yeah.
They're one of our limited edition brands.
Yeah, that was Brad Buchanan, I remember, not Brad Dotson.
We showed on one of the earlier slides the campus-wide services, and one of the ones that you saw listed there was outdoor media advertising, and so that's something that we are working on with the authority, with others on campus, to see what the opportunities will be in the future. The work that Brad Johnson and CPD are doing is step one on that, and there's other steps that will need to happen in order to make that a reality. But this begins to set the stage for that.
Anyone else?
I have a question.
John.
Brad, am I wrong in thinking that this will probably be decided on a case-by-case basis as it comes up, or will it be an overall?
The signage. So as Brett has here on his slide, there's a district sign plan that is on it. So a district sign plan, and Brett, please correct me if I'm wrong here, really looks holistically at the campus, everything within the boundaries, and is very specific about the size, the location, and the types of signs. But it is looked at on a district larger scale. So it's more than just a case-by-case basis.
One more thing. Will there be, maybe not under signage, but under some form of electronic art? Would that come under the signage thing, or is that altogether different?
That's a good question. It actually does. So you guys
And I'm asking that deliberately because that's one of my intentions. And everyone here be forewarned, we're going to light this damn place up with art, electronic art stuff. So, and I think it's crucial.
Good. Yeah, so this district sign plan, there's a coined term for exactly what you're talking about in the Denver zoning code that somebody came up with, and it's called a special lighting element. So this allows signs and special lighting elements on the campus that otherwise might not be allowed. So the last kind of key slide on the zoning is related to parking. So we know when the stock show is on versus a day in the middle of the winter versus a sort of mid-range demand day, the parking dynamic and the parking demand is going to change all the time. So given that, and the access to transit, and the commitment of the authority to manage the site and manage access and parking on the site with transportation demand management policies and so on, the zoning would not set any minimum amount of parking requirements as happens in other parts of the city. It also would not establish any maximum amount of parking that would be required per individual land use, like you would see would happen elsewhere. Okay, so you guys have talked about the DSG over and over, so I'm just going to skip ahead to the end. So I just want to remind you of those dates. July 10th, we're going to planning board hearing on the zoning. We're going to city council on September 9th, it's slated for. And then we would follow the DSG document that you guys worked on. That gets adopted after the zoning by CPD. So that's the schedule going forward. That concludes my presentation. Any other question?
Any other?
Riverfront, yep.
Okay, we're going to go to, yeah, it's a good segue to the riverfront.
To the riverfront?
Yeah, it's a good segue to the riverfront.
That's Mike.
Brad, are you kicking us off on the riverfront?
I'm kicking us off on the riverfront. While Zach is putting the slides up, I want to tee up the conversation on the river, and to do that, go back in time a few years. You all will remember when back in 2015 there was the campaign for 2C. And that was the extension of the lodger's tax that supported the redevelopment of this campus. And when voters in every single precinct in Denver supported the redevelopment, but one of the things that they said that was the most important to them was access to the river. That historically the river has been blocked by infrastructure like rail lines and sewer lines, and we have been carrying that commitment forward. There's a strong commitment from this program and from the mayor to honor the wishes of voters and to honor that desire to really create a new space for the community, for Denver on the river. And so we have been doing that through a number of things. Most importantly, the work to move the rail off the river. And then right next to that, the commitment from Metro Wastewater to fund the relocation and burial of the Delgany. And this work really sets the stage for the future of the river, and Eric will talk a little bit more about that. But the river continues to be and will continue to be an opportunity for partnerships, for others to come forward and say, hey, here's what I want to see on the river, and to bring to bring dollars, to bring partnerships to the river, and to connect the open space at the National Western Center to the greater context of upstream and downstream along the South Platte River. And to help enable that, we have been working in our office, we have been working with the Greenway Foundation, who for the last 45 years has been a champion for this river, has fundraised millions and millions of dollars to make improvements to the river, to riparian corridors, to parks and open space along the river. And we are excited to have Jeff Shoemaker as part of our team to help us vision about what are the possibilities, both during our construction and then for the next 100 years of the campus. And so with that, for the second time this evening, I'd like to introduce Jeff Shoemaker from the Greenway Foundation.
Woo! Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Thank you. So I think the new name of this whole thing should be Frommel and the Brads. I think that's what we should. I think that's what we should call this. I could walk through this room, and I don't know every one of you, but Mr. Speaker, it's good to see you here, and there are so many of you here. John, man, we hit 45 years on June 16th, and you were there 45 years ago at the very first meeting of then the Platte River Development Committee, and a year later the Greenway Foundation in Mayor Bill McNichol's office, along with my dad and 7 others, and who could have known. And when I started this crazy job in 1982, I sat down with each of my board members, and John Zapian in June of 1982, and these are your words, sir. He said, you know what, I'm tired of Globeville being the armpit of Denver, and we need to change that, and look at the change that's happening now. So here's what I want to do, and that is I want to throw some context out, and then I want to speak to my families and our family's foundation to the future of this river, because you know what, we don't have too many pieces of real estate along a river in Denver that was so precious when the city became a city and became so defiled. And I look back, and 100 years ago in 1919, imagine what this river was. It was the vibrancy, it was the heart, it was the passion of the city. There's a reason we have a city called Denver. There's 2 reasons, actually, the South Platte River and Cherry Creek, which is, I'm certain all of you know, which is why when people Google Earth Denver, they go, why the heck is the core of the city at an angle? And it's at an angle because they platted the city based on the direction of Cherry Creek and the South Platte. That's our history. That's our birthright. But 66 years later, after 1919, what happened in 1965? Betty Cram, you know what happened in 1965, and that is 120,000 cubic feet per second of really bad water came raging through this city. And it split this city in half, and finally there was a wake-up call that said, no more. No more. And I'm delighted to tell you that 45 years, so let's add 9 years, so 54 years later, my father's dream was, mark my words, boy, and my dad was a Navy man, and so, mark my words, boy. He goes, one day the best place to live, work, and play in this town will be along the South Platte River. And here we are today. Property values along the river are 35% higher than anywhere else in the city and county of Denver, along with Cherry Creek. So here's what I'm going to ask of each of you today with my absolute firm commitment to match your passion. And I said this to Billy Gregg today, and by the way, and I've said this in other meetings, to have Billy Gregg be the heart and soul of creating the vision for this 8 to 10 acres, however we all work it out, to have him be the vision and passion is so perfect. Billy and I have known each other for decades, and whoever picked Billy, give yourself a pat on the back, because I came up with a new term which is called DUNCIT, which stands for Do No Small Things. Do no small things. We have this opportunity, and all of you have been and will continue to be the visionaries behind doing and there's generational and then there's centurion. And it is our gift, it is our responsibility to make sure that what we lay out for this modest piece of dirt is as magical as it can be, as precious as it can be, as engaging as it can be. I am not a neighbor of yours, for those of you that live here. That's no surprise to you. I grew up in the Welsher neighborhood, and I live in the Welsher neighborhood. I literally live 3 blocks from my family's home. But you know what? I'm one of these guys that, wears the stupid shorts and the stupid shoes and puts, and rides a bike. And the reason I'm going to leave you after this is because we have the gift of our 7-year-old granddaughter with us this week, who finished her 4th of 5 days at one of our 2 summer camps at the Greenway Foundation. And by the way, it's right along Cherry Creek, over Cherry Creek in Lodo. So I love my river, and I love the riverfront open space we're talking about, but I love Esther Olivia Benson just a tiny bit more. So that's my weird way of saying to you, I'm here and then I'm gone. I needed you to know the reason. Here's my commitment to you. Here's my commitment to you. Dream big. Do not be afraid. Don't worry. I'm going to make Barb and Brad and Brad and Brad and Brad crazy. Don't worry about the money. Because what stifles, after 37 years of my life, what stifles a vision, and that's reality. We all have to live within a budget. Let's create a dream. Let's cost that dream. Let's design that dream. Let's fund that dream. And I'm one of these weirdos that lives to go out and ask people for opium, which is other people's money. Okay? That's what I love to do. And my commitment to you as a person, as a Denver guy, as a river guy, as the Greenway Foundation's director is, I assure you that we will do everything. David Howlett is in the back of the room. He's on our team with Capitol representatives. And our job for the National Western Center is to go find opium, and we will do that. So I beg you tonight, think about what we can do to make this a place to where Esther and her little sister Prudence are in our home. We put them in a bike cart and we pedal them down to this part of Denver. Give us a reason to make that happen, and give everybody a reason to say, you know what I want to do today? I want to get on my bike, or I want to Uber, and what am I going to do? I said, I'm going to go down to the riverfront open space and celebrate one of the most historic sections of our river. And my commitment back to you is, we will dunce it and do everything we can to make this possible. So dream and be bold and don't be afraid and do no small things. And my commitment to all of you, I asked to be here tonight so I could look all of you that are here, eyeball to eyeball, and tell you, if I ask you to do something, I'll bring at least a nickel for every nickel I ask of you. And then we're going to create something great. And then we're going to celebrate, because you know what? Brad talked about this. Since 1974, over $800 million of investment from every imaginable source you can think of has been invested in taking what was our birthright, and we did a great job. All we did is not turn it on fire. I think the flood killed that at 65. And now look where we are, and look what we can do. But there's more work to be done, and I'm in the game. Thank you, Brad Dodson, for letting me be here. Put me to work, create a vision, create a budget, tell me where you need money, and put me to work. And Betty Cram, not everybody gets a bridge and a road named after her, so hot diggity, and well-deserved. Thank you all very, very much.
I have a quick question for you. Jeff, I have a quick question.
Yes.
How old was John when he joined your board? Was he like 10, 12 years old?
13.
13, okay. I just wanted to be sure.
Yes, and he still had the mustache.
It was a different color then.
Thanks, Jeff. It's very hard to follow Jeff when he's in his mode there. So let's see if I can get this. All right. So we have been working for the last 6 months on some concepts for the riverfront. I've got Billy Gregg here from the Studio CPG, and he has been wonderful to work with. to be able to help us kind of talk through all these pieces of the riverfront. And just, I want to go back to, this was the public realm diagram that we did back in campus placemaking, and it seems like years ago, and it probably was almost a year and a half ago that we did this. But the riverfront, the green area number 4, is part of an overall system of the open space in the campus. So we want that to work in concert with all these other spaces that we have. And likewise, we want it to work in concert with all the other riverfront projects that are going on. Carpio Sanguinetti, Glow, the park down in Rhino, all those pieces, we don't want to duplicate everything, so we want to work in concert with those so that we can have a great riverfront here. So the programming ideas, you guys have seen these, you have helped develop some of these from their public meetings and meetings here. This was our starting point for what we think we want to happen down at the riverfront. And I think from the start, this has never been an active ball field, hard surface basketball court kind of open space. That is not, I think, what anyone wants here. From the master plan, it's always been engage the river in nature, and we are really trying to pursue that with the design that we're doing now. So these are some of the pieces. Billy has taken his team and started to locate those. We've also identified other pieces. Just one thing to mention, Barb Frommel has been working actively on getting grants for the riverfront. Right now we have $3.5 million worth of grants out there that we are hoping to get to add to our riverfront budget. Let's really clap when we get that 3.5, but it's really great that we're going after, and there are more that we are going through, and Jeff Shoemaker in the Brunet Foundation is also helping us with all of that work. So it's really exciting to see the other pieces. The majority of the work that we're doing for NUCO and the phase 1 and 2 work is really the big infrastructure work. We're getting rid of the railroad tracks. We're moving to Delgany. We're building National Western Drive. We're kind of setting the stage for what the riverfront can be. But for all the hopes and dreams that Jeff just mentioned, we can't afford those right now, but we are looking at ways to get those pieces, and that those grants will help us do that. So we're moving forward with that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Billy Gregg, and he will further inspire you on the river. I'll drive. Sure. Yes.
Good evening. I'm Billy Gregg. It is truly a privilege to have a chance to work on this project and work with you all. I'm very, very excited to be able to do it. Go ahead. Before we start, let's just say it's a big deal to move a railroad, and it is a big deal to relocate sanitary, and just the chance to get access to this piece of river, it means a lot. So we're taking this place apart, and then we're going to put it back together, and we're going to put it back together with the elements of the National Western Campus, and we're also, just as important maybe as moving a railroad or moving sanitary, we're building 2 bridges connecting these neighborhoods east-west in a way that they've never been connected before. When we talk about putting something together, my job is to understand what the controlling elements are. What is it that I have to obey? And that starts to give me the shape of the park and starts to tell me what we can do with it. So we have a 10-year floodline, we have a 100-year floodline. We're working down to the 10, generally speaking. We're looking beyond that in places, and we can talk about it, but the work is going to go down to the 10. We're working with easements associated with the Delgany, and we'll look at that real quickly in some cross-sections so everybody understands what the rules are there. We're working from that back of curb at National Western Drive, the new National Western Drive. We're working back up to connect back up to the rivers at 52nd and 48, Betty Cram Drive. We have, and I'll show you, we have a narrow parcel of land, a long, slender parcel of land that is sloping from National Western Drive down to the edge of the river. The river holds what feels like a level line, National Western Drive slopes up from downstream back up to Betty Cran. That's the shape that we're looking at. Go ahead. So you've seen this diagram many times. National Western Drive, the river, the 10-year flood lines right along that light colored line right there. Low point sloping up to a high point here. And we have a chance here to develop, first of all, just a long bending trail right at the edge of the river. Walking off that low point here, all the way around up here to a high point at this intersection. The park starts to develop this way. We're going to have busy, active things going on upstream from Sheep Bridge to Betty Cran Drive, right up here. Amphitheater, possible retail and commercial. There's a great place to get right to the edge of normal high water. And it is reinforced. It is a strong place. It's going to be a fun place to get to use a path like this to get there. Downstream of Sheep Bridge, it gets a little quieter. You're not looking upstream at the water coming toward you. You're looking downstream and you're letting that water slip away down beneath the bridge at 52nd, new bridge at 52nd. That's kind of the setup. There's enough slope here that you don't see walks going straight from the street down to the river's edge. We're going to work our way along the slope. That's how this is going to get put together. Okay, go ahead. Those long paths the long paths and the grade let us start to organize this place with a number of different kind of what we call landscape types. Different kind of groups of plants, different kinds of feeling. And these are just examples of some other projects where we start to do that. When we have a real high point like we do up towards Betty Cran, and we have slope, we can start to build something real comfortably, something like a formal amphitheater that's going to fit into the site very, very comfortably. And we can start worrying about things like materials or getting some additional money to make that a little nicer. Okay, high and low helps us in another way. We can create places high, maybe just right off the street, where you have a view. You have really a good control, good command of the whole river. But you don't have to walk all the way in it. You can come right in off the street, something like what you see on the left. You can also go down right to the edge, and we think there's some potential to make some very, very pleasant spots right down there in the edge of the river. A little looser, a little more relaxed. We spent some time down there last week. I'm very excited about the existing vegetation, some of the stuff we may be able to save and start to work around. We love the Sheep Bridge. We love it from a formal place. Well, I understand some of the issues going on right here. But what the Sheep Bridge does is very interesting in that, first of all, it connects us to former uses out there. But formally, to give us an upstream side and a downstream side and something to have your back to while you're enjoying the program at the park, those kinds of things are really important. And it does all of that without being a wall. Everything in the park can move back and forth, can kind of flow back and forth beneath that, and it's going to work really well. We also like the fact that we can take stormwater off of National Western Drive and we can start to concentrate that in the park. There's some real potential to do that. And we can use that water to create yet another landscape type. There's a lot of potential in that. Okay, go ahead. And we don't want to forget the kids. This is a long, skinny site. Maybe it's not a playground that we're going to put in here. But it's easy to think that we can start to create play events along the length of that long arcing path at the edge of the river. So it's something like that. Go ahead. So we put together some real quick cross sections so you can see how the pieces really go together and you understand what we're looking at. This is upstream, getting really close to the intersection between National Western and Betty Cran. National Western, a shared use walkway, a very wide walkway. Delgany, you can't see Delgany, but it's still there, right? It's running along right behind the back of the walk, along the length of the park, right here. At this section upstream, we are high. There's enough space here for that retail or commercial possibility, that kind of development. There's enough slope that we can develop an association with that, an amphitheater, and we can pull the ground back a little bit just above the river's edge, and that is a nice place for something like outdoor education. All those things linked coming right down the hill. A little bit further downstream of Sheep Bridge, looking upstream, you see the bridge in the background. Delgany still there. We're a little bit lower, a little closer to the water. This isn't so steep. This is just a gentle sloping lawn with the walk tracing the edge of the river right out here. Go ahead. Still further downstream, once you get to the low point, you're actually right at the 100-year flood elevation. You're looking right out across the park from the back of the walk right to the river. You're very close. We were there last week. It feels really good out there. You're at the low point, that's where water wants to come. If we're taking water off the street and concentrating it, this is where it's going to come. We can do something here to filter that stormwater before we return it to the river. We can do it in a garden form, and it's kind of like we're inviting the river edge, that river edge, back up into the park instead of having to keep everything separate. One more. All the way down at 52nd. 51st. Sorry. We have a little land here in the park that's isolated by the fact that Denver still has one sanitary line that's actually running upstream. It's going to come out from under this bridge and run about 150 feet, right where it is right now, up on top of Gray until it gets to the siphon site that's going to take it back across the Platte. That leaves this piece of the park right here as a landscape opportunity primarily right now, an entry into the campus. That's what we're looking at right now.
So we are working with Denver Wastewater to look at a study about trying to get rid of that pipe too. It's not currently in our time frame, but they are starting that discussion. So that is definitely something we want to work on. So, as I mentioned, we have limited budget for this component, but we are looking broader. These are the things that we think we can afford as part of our base elements. So again, we're setting the table for all these big pieces. So obviously all the grading, getting all the final grades right, set up for all the walkways and trails that we'll put in, the informal amphitheater, get that seated and at least graded out. All the riparian and water areas, we can take care of that. Picnic Grove, getting the grading and the seating ready for that. Events lawn, all the planting and irrigation, so we can put in all of those components. Public art coordination, we've got about $1 million for public art within the riverfront. So that call for art, and I'll talk about that in a second, will come out here probably in July or late July or August. So that's a big deal and a big help here. All the electric rough-ins, so anything where we're going to need power in the future, we'll rough that in, get the conduit in so that we can run those lines, and any data for internet or those kind of things so that we can have a good active park in that regard. Signage and wayfinding, how we direct people, site lighting, what kind of lighting we put along the riverfront to make it feel safe and secure, and then site furnishings, benches, trash receptacles, those kind of things. So those are all the things that we can handle right now with our budget. So then the additional elements, so yeah, Vern?
That's all right. Further on this, my question is, and I'm not going to have you go back, but as I saw the overall site plan of the river layout, how much of a change in the elevation on the national western side of the river, which would be the east side of the river, how much of a raise of the elevation will there be?
I know you didn't want me to go back, but I have to. So this dashed line is the existing grade, all right? So right now, the Delgany interceptor sits right there, out of the ground, right at the top of the bank, all right? So in this section at the north end, we're bringing a fair amount down here, but we are filling on this side, all right? Because we have to meet the grade for Betty Cram Drive, and we have to set the elevations of all the buildings around Betty Cram Drive so that they can be above the 100-year floodplain. All right, so that's why we're high there, and then we're cutting there to get rid of the Delgany.
So
That's
basically
just
what
one
you're
place.
actually doing is you're actually widening the river on the east side somewhat.
In places, yes.
In places. And I guess where I'm actually going with this, if you look at the bottom there, as that river comes down and goes up north, all right, you got a pretty good arc on the west side of the river. And I'm just wondering how, yes, and then I'm just concerned about how that arc is affected, you know, during, you know, when the river is really running, or if we would have a big storm there, and how that's going to affect that whole west side as it goes down. Now, I'm understanding that there is some stuff in the plans here where we're going to raise the levees over toward on that side. But as we do that, and as you effectively do things on the east side of the river, you know, how all that's going to fold into together. I mean, is it going to affect the plans that we have for the west side of the river? And in what way will it affect it as we have that travel? Because, you know, you've got quite a bend there that is, most of the water is going to be going to the west.
Yep.
And we're going to have to be protected from that. And I guess has that, you know, I understand what you're doing, and I think it's a beautiful plan. But I do have to be concerned on how it will affect the west side of the river, and in what ways will that change some of the studies that we're in the process of doing right at this moment.
Yeah. So just from, okay, now I got to go back even more, sorry.
The presentation.
Go back to the plan. Going the wrong way, sorry. I used to see the whole presentation. All right, so just to clarify, this is right now the edge of the river, right? We aren't changing that piece, and this dark piece is what the Urban Waterways team is working on. All right, so from that 10-year line down is what Urban Waterways is doing, and that'll all be tied then to the study that Tim mentioned earlier that's being done for the levee. Okay, so we aren't really changing this piece from that side. The other thing that we have to do is whatever we do on this side, including the bridges, can't result in a rise in the 100-year flood elevation. All right, so we are balancing what we do to keep under that 100-year flood line, so that we don't create a worse problem on the west side or downstream. Okay?
And you can see it's drawn, right? On the other side. Is that 100 years?
Yeah, that's the 10-year and 100-year on the other side, and those are existing. So, yes.
Billy, thanks for this. I think it was you're very perceptive, and I think it was very sensitive, some of the approaches you have. One of the concerns I just have to throw out is that maybe and maybe you've thought of this and it's not, you're not going to do this, but that it be over-programmed or maybe become too busy, or you duplicate events that really are already on campus. You know, you see a beer garden, that might be cool on the river, but coffee shops and a lot of other stuff. I'm a little worried about being too busy, and part of my concern is that our parks in the city are already overused heavily, and I don't want this to become, you know, the same thing. I think a park it could be a very restful place to just go. Maybe it has quiet spaces that, you know, where you're with nature. So I just want to say that's the concern.
I'll say something. That's just very well taken, and the idea that there need to be a variety of spaces and uses along here is very, very true. And the other thing is when we talk about doing a drawing to a base condition, it just needs to work just that way. without anything extra. And we're going to make sure that that happens. And then we'll have a spot to add as funding becomes available. That's the way it's going.
I'll just add one more
Eric,
thing. So also,
and then we have John.
I'm coming, John.
Okay.
This open space will be managed and programmed by the authority. Okay, this is not a Denver park. Okay? So whatever happens out here will work in concert with what's happening on the campus. So they're not going to duplicate things unless one is so wildly popular that they need another one. But so it's all being programmed as one site, including all that open space and the public space that I showed in that first slide.
But it's still a public space.
It's still public space. That's correct. John?
Drew, we need more beer gardens. I feel humbled that I'm getting a second chance to be a part of this project on the river. We have a commonality. Old Mayor McNichols, bless his heart, when he was sober, he meant what he said. And he allowed it to get done. He raked me over the coals a couple of times because I never supported him politically. And I let him know why. And damn it, he invited me into his office for a drink and a cigar. Much to the cringe of his security people. But I feel very humbled that I get another chance in my lifetime to be involved in this river project on both sides of the river. I have every confidence in the presentation that you made, and thank you for it, that it's going to be a real good effort that's going to result in some real benefits. Vern, when we talked before, one of the things that we said in our meetings was that we need to put as much emphasis on the West Bank at a minimum to complement the work being done on the East Bank. And we have a lot of work to do there. So I feel, first of all, grateful that I'm still here and have that opportunity the second time around to work on the river on the Globel side. Armando and Dave left already, but they were part of our effort there and ongoing. So we have a lot of work to do yet, and I have every confidence and based on what's happened in the past that we can get it done. We've come a long way out of this room, so we can do it, and I said I'm very grateful to have another chance to go at it. Thank you.
E?
They're done.
As the microphone makes its way to AE, we're about at the end of our time, so this will probably be the last question. We're already about 10, 15 minutes.
So I have 10 questions. This might be a Barbara Frommel question. I know you're scared because I could be serious. I saw the body language there. This is an interesting dynamic that I don't understand. This absolutely fantastic raising millions of dollars while a creative process is going on. So I kind of would like to know, how does this happen? Is that there are no constraints, or is it just like do what you want to do, here's the cash? It's very cool to understand that. And one quick thing while you're coming to the mic, I want to kind of support what Drew said and attach to that the ongoing conversations we've had over the years about can we create the original habitat restoratively somewhere along the river and on the campus. And this is part of what this is. I think of this as the National Western Center campus. Every square inch of it we can be learning about our world and all of these things. And we can leverage some of this with one of the first open classrooms in the first nature preserve that was ever declared in Colorado, which is in Denver, which is Heron Pond, which you know about, I'm sure. So I think we have a true environmental education, ecological content as outdoor classrooms that can appear to be totally recreational, but I hope that there'll be a lot of mindfulness about restoring habitat as it was before colonialization, industrialization, etc., because that's part of really healing the land and part of the spirit, I think, of a lot of what this is. And I agree with John, this is very exciting and very thoughtful. So, on the funding.
Do you want me to answer that? Okay. So thank you. I'm over here. That way you don't all have to turn around. So thank you. That's a great question. I would say raising money for capital improvements is more of an art than a science. What I do is I take a look at the goals that we have for the riverfront. Things like creating an open space buffer, improving the environment, restoring some of that, what we call the riparian area, which is right next to the channel, creating places for people to be active, like trails, or even lawns, right? So all of those amenities that I think we all would like to see on the riverfront. I look at those, and then I look at what funding is out there, and I try to find matches. And so some funders are really interested in things like stormwater quality, or riparian restoration, or wildlife habitat. And some other funders are more interested in physical activity and getting people outside and providing places for people to be active. And so it's kind of like putting a puzzle together. I find the funders that are funding the types of things that we're trying to build, and then I match that with the pieces of our open space that fit that thing. And so then it's a win-win for both us and for the funder.
All right.
Okay, there's one quick question because she never asked a question.
Actually, it's just a comment.
It's a comment.
Right, very obvious comment.
So as we talk about the open space and all of its uses and function and what it is going to serve, you know, obviously, I hope everyone's thinking about the bridges and how the bridges connect to the adjacent neighborhoods and how we draw people in from the adjacent neighborhoods. And, you know, that would include like walking and bike paths on the bridges and all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to throw that comment out.
We have shared use paths on each bridge. One connects directly to Carpio Sanguinetti on that 51st, and then the one at Betty Cram will connect all the way to Washington. So we are providing those connections. Washington Street is doing a piece of that connection, and we'll continue it on once we get from our bridge forward. So let me just go, our next steps on the riverfront. So we're in the program refinement concept design stage now. We'll finish this up in August or September. Barb will continue on her magic with third-party agreements and grants. There's still other grants that we can go after, so we're going to do that. Riverfront design will start in August or September, depending when we finish up our concept work here, and that'll go through April of 2020. Then we will work with the construction procurement, get contractors on board to build this thing during early to mid 2020. And then it gets built February 2021 to February 2023. This is one of the last pieces that gets built on the campus because we have to wait for the bridges to be done, we have to wait for National Western Drive to be done, we have to wait to move to Allegheny and all the railroad stuff. So this is really one of the last pieces. It'll probably finish up just about the same time as the Livestock Center finishes up. So that's the riverfront. I'll give a quick public art update. I don't need a slide for this. It's pretty simple. We have 3 public art procurements that we're working on. The first one is already out to an international call, and that's for the main campus plaza. Drew is on that committee, I believe. I hope so. Okay. So those requests come back to us in July 21st, 22nd. The Arts and Venues group that we're working with is expecting 200 to 300 submittals. So that will be fun to go through. So it'll be pretty interesting. We'll narrow that down and then have an RFP with 4 or 5 that we bring artists in for specific pieces. Then the other one we're doing, we are selecting, we've already selected the committees for the riverfront and the river bridges. We'll have our first meeting for those in July and August. Late July and in August, and then those RFQs will go out to artists for those too. So it's very exciting to see the public art piece moving forward. So that is all I've got. Any questions on that?
I have a question about that process,
Yep.
just real quick. Do I need a mic? I don't know.
Sure.
No, well,
So I wanted to just check in on how transparent this can be because I think that there's some worthy conversations with people that aren't necessarily even on the selection panels around different possibilities. And I know that the tradition is kind of for the selection panels not to be that public, but since you kind of opened the door there a little bit by mentioning someone who's on there, I think it would be great if people had things that they wanted to say, that they could say to the, to suggest to the, how does that work? As far as...
That's a good question. Let me talk to Michael Chavez, who's running this from Arts and Venues. I don't want to step on their process. They have a full process that they do. Let me check. I don't have an answer for you.
It's a creative question, not a impositional question.
Yep. Right.
To help people feel involved and fun.
Yeah. All right. Anything else?
No.
Thank you.
I want to thank all of you. We went about 20 minutes over, but I'll see you all next month. Thanks for coming. Have a great
Can I make
rest
a
of the evening.
comment before we adjourn?
You only have like 20 seconds.
Okay. Mike? I want to ask everyone here to indulge me just a minute. I think we have to take a good look at ourselves, this advisory committee, our future. I want you to think about it for the next couple of months. But I think we should make a determination as to which direction we want to take this committee and what we want this committee to become, say, another year or two down the line. So please think about that and bring that back. Thank you.
Thanks, John. And what we'll do, we'll dedicate an entire meeting to this down the line somewhere.
Good.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Good night. Bye-bye.